People of our nation mired in toxic partisanship, left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we the people rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Hello. Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, man.
Here.
Barely made it. It was a struggle, man.
Survived your weekend camping?
Yeah, the struggle bus of liberty took a detour this weekend on to hanging out with some friends, and I had a wonderful time. Just a wonderful time. Always do.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a nice thing. It's a good weekend for camping all around.
It was perfect till today, where it started raining every 5 minutes. We got it's kind of redneckville. Like we got people smashing on cars, making derby cars for the San Filippo Smash, which is this huge demolition derby in Otsego County. It's just absolutely epic. 400 or 500 cars get smashed up in the course of the weekend. They raise $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for San Filippo's disease, which is a crippling disease that affects young children. And it's just an amazing event. So every one of my buddies practically is out there smashing on the car, getting it ready for this thing. They want to win, man. Yeah,
that sounds like fun.
It's good stuff. Like there's a lot of good stuff that happens in my neck of the woods. People doing things that are important, like honest, like small scale important, interactive with each other important. Like we got older kids teaching younger kids how to get their cars ready. We've got them pulling out gas tanks and loaning each other equipment. We got a guy letting everybody use his freaking garage. I mean, it's just good stuff. It's really, really good stuff.
That's fun. Again, that's the good sense of community that we want. Again, don't let anyone tell you like libertarians don't care about community, because we do. We just don't want it forced on us.
We don't want guns pointed at everybody saying this is the community or else.
But community is important. Like doing that type of stuff, helping others, and just like learning and sharing with folks. That's good. Although I've never been to a demolition derby. I got to make it out one day. Yeah, no. Somehow I have never been to one.
Oh, dude, if you want to go to this one, let me know. Like, we'll figure out a place for you to stay. Maybe you can stay in my camper or some stuff like that. And look, it's going to be exhausting. It's like 12 hours. So you don't have to plan on going for the whole time. It's 2 days. It goes over the course of 2 days. So it's and I mean, I've posted pictures. You could check out my stuff from last year. It's like wall to wall, like you just see cars going on forever, just waiting for their turn to get smashed into pieces. And man, they have a kids demolition derby where they get those little plastic vehicles out and the kids like drive around and wreck each other a little bit. And there's always, like the kid jumps out of his car and that's like, it's really a lot of fun. It really is. And it raises an amazing amount of money for an incurable disease that needs more research that we'd like to. This event has an impact on the funding for this disease, and it's really, really, and just right here in little old Otsego County, man. People come from
cool
all over, like Texas and California, and just to smash up cars. It's a blast.
That's awesome. I had no idea that like that was a thing, or that huge event happened. I'm gonna have to check it out. I'm gonna have to.
What's that? October 1st and 2nd. It's at the Morris County Fairgrounds, and it's just amazing, man. If we get more people there, we get people hanging out. It costs like $10 to get in, but you get unlimited amounts of demolition derby, man. And people around here live for that stuff, and I love it.
Sounds like a good time. All right, so anyway, we should probably talk about the topics of the show, I suppose.
Yes,
right?
Let's do it. Break it down. You had some success spreading a libertarian message this week, and because it's one of the ways how we do things. I think, we're struggling with popularity. We're struggling with failure. We're struggling with not meeting goals. And yet we got guys like Kevin impacting their community. And I think it's beautiful.
I'm trying to, like again, it's one of those things that like if you're listening to a show, I hope you like think about ways in which you can position yourself as an expert in your community, right? Like not everyone has to have a national podcast or go on like Fox News and stuff. Like we can't all be as cool as like Spike Cohen going on like Fox all the time and whatnot. Like the local talk shows a lot of times like need people to come on and if you can speak intelligently and in an interesting way about issues from a libertarian perspective, folks always need guests. People want someone to offer a new and unique point of view that often isn't heard in these discussions. Like try to get yourself out there and start talking to like some of your local hosts about this stuff. And so I've been a frequent guest on like my local NPR affiliate, and that's what I got to do last week is I got to talk about student loans. So they're like, hey, we want a libertarian perspective on this. We want someone who has student debt and is also against like the government's approach to solving this, Joe Biden's approach to solving this.
Yeah.
And so
I
like
think that's well, I think that's huge because I think we get into like, look, I'm going to tell you, I said it on our show 2 weeks ago, like Robert Reich making some controversial, semi like ridiculous comments, but given the current state of governing and the systems that we're dealing with, like he's like, hey, everybody's mad about student loans, but what about all the corporate giveaways and what about all this and what about all that? He was actually right. Like that should be included in the conversation,
yeah.
man. So
I
what
mean,
direction did you go in?
so well, the guy I was talking to, so someone who was obviously in favor of the plan, like he tried to do some of that, like, well, what about the corporate giveaways? I'm like, yeah, those stink too. I don't like them. Like you're not talking to a Republican here. Like, not, I mean,
Yeah, I
Democrats
know.
do that too, but I'm like, yeah, I don't like those either. I'd rather we not give away our money to corporations and subsidize like cronies and all that stuff. Like, yeah,
Well, let's be
that
fair
stinks.
to the humans that are in the Republican Party. A lot of them are like, yeah, well, we shouldn't be subsidizing shit. Like that's part of the problem. So I got to give,
Yeah.
we've got to remember, I think, right, to be fair, we've got to remember there's people inside of these parties that are being lied to, manipulated, and used like for fodder, for cannon fodder and political fodder. And I think,
Yeah.
and in the Democratic Party too, guys, like they're sometimes you guys just like get confused. They're all screwing you over.
Yeah. No, I
They're
mean, yeah,
taking your
it's,
money, they're
yeah.
taking your energy, and they're not offering you solutions. They're offering you recycled shit to keep you upset.
Nope,
You know?
that's 100%. That's part of it, right? And so like the kind of overall gist of how I approached this was mostly that like this doesn't solve the underlying issue. It fails to actually help most students in the long term. It is unfair. I did talk about like the unfairness of it.
Yeah,
And the big thing is like we need a lot more like kind of cultural change and financial literacy around this stuff, right? Which I think we're starting to get, right? People are being more career focused with choosing college. People are now aware of like what happens when you take on too much student debt.
yes,
People are starting to understand that and making more price sensitive decisions about where and how they go to college, in a way that like I didn't consider as much as I should have,
right.
when I went to college. But again, there's a lot of pressure on, on you as a student going in, like this is the only way you're going to be successful. And you hear that from your guidance counselor, you hear it from
Yeah,
your parents, you hear it from everyone. And you get this pressure to be like, I just need to go somewhere and it doesn't really matter how much it costs. And and I'll pay it back later. And
and
a lot of times most students will be okay, but it takes a while. It took me my first 5 years out of college stunk. I made no money and I wasn't
yeah,
using my history degree in any way. It
yeah,
stunk. Like now
uh,
I'm doing better, but
yeah.
and
But
and and like to that end, I want to solve like that problem, right? Like how do we get students to think more consciously about the costs and
I
consequences of
agree
going to
that
college,
would be a big
but
impact.
b it when students do need help, like let's think about like the first few years out of college is usually when they need the most help. Like part of what makes this plan so regressive is that it doesn't consider future earnings. Again, if we just did this based on my first couple years out of college, yeah, I was not making anything. I wasn't able to make those payments. I was on income-based repayments, and then I made bad decisions, not understanding the impact of capitalized interest on those loans, right? Because I was like, oh, well, I'll just pay this, and by meanwhile, my interest is still capitalizing. As soon as I leave that program, it all piles on. And now
Yeah.
I paid $11,500 on my loans, but I owe $4,000 more than I originally took out.
Oh, that's such garbage. Okay, so look, I want to reiterate something, that system itself has, in a sense, become predatory. You can't bankrupt out of those obligations. The college is not accountable for providing you with a degree that has value, okay, and not informing you of your decisions and the issues that you face with what you're choosing to major in. And the other thing is there's this issue of prestige, right? Like, okay, going to Harvard is better than going to SUNY Binghamton, but why and how? And that I don't know is true. And I think
Well,
that
it sort of is, but like not in the
because
way
you make
people think it
connections while
is.
you're there, that's
Exactly.
bullshit.
That's
That's
well, no,
bullshit.
no, it's not. It's not bullshit though. It is partially true. Like if you go to a college and you're able to leverage that effectively, right? And not everyone is. It's not that the education is necessarily far superior. I had friends who told me like who are going to like other, prestigious schools, and they're like, yeah, like I'm gonna be so much better connected. I'm like, yeah, are you gonna use those though? Like, if you are great, like that's great. But like, if you're not, like, the education probably isn't all that much different in most cases. Um,
That's the point I'm trying to make, I guess. And here's the thing, Kevin. What I would like to see to make this system less predatory is a real assist in high school as to making decisions as to what you want to be when you grow up. Right now, college has become a placeholder and a suggestion for guidance counselors. And look, the reality is that the inflation associated with college costs has in part at least been brought on by the excessive ability for the government to fund college
yeah.
educations, right? Like,
And that's part of why I said too. I was like, okay, well, part of this is that again, it's not an abstract thing to me. I have been on the board of trustees at a college. I served for 2 years
sure,
on the board of a college, and like
you're a
that
good guy,
discussion
man.
has to happen, right? Like it's like, hey, from our perspective, like the right thing to do is we need to make sure we help maintain the integrity of these educational programs, and we improve the amenities on campus. We make the capital expenditures to improve the quality of life of the students, and the best way to do that is by raising tuition, by raising cost of room and board, because the rich will be able to pay for it. The middle class students will get loans and scholarships, and the working class students will get scholarships, grants, and loans, right? So that's how you end up doing it. And the short-term solutions, they're going to be fine because they're going to be able to pay for this. And it's not that they don't consider the long-term like financial health of their students, but they need to keep their campus alive. They need to attract students because they're not price sensitive. They're looking at the new residence hall or the cool new like science building or whatever. They're
Right.
not thinking about how much this is going to cost them 3 years out of college. But again, that's part of
I
the
know.
financial literacy. But I do want to make one other point though, because you'd said
Please.
like, yeah, high school students should like have more focus on like what their career is going to be. I kind of disagree with you there, because to me, I thought I was going to be an archaeologist coming out of high school. It's like, yeah, like I'm gonna study history and I'm gonna study archaeology. And this is what I'm gonna do. That's not where I ended up going. I ended up deciding like that I didn't want to go to school specifically for archaeology because it was too narrow. And then I went
And
to
you found
school.
out there was no money in archaeology, and you'd be living in a desert if you actually got one of the cooler archaeology
Yeah,
jobs,
it's
like
it's very. I do know a friend who went to my college, which did not have an archaeology program, who did that, but she also had some like family support to be able to facilitate that, which I would not have had.
well, that's the
Uh,
thing, right? Like, there is different sets of
but
life circumstances, and what I'm talking about is,
what
I guess maybe I wasn't as clear as I wanted to be. I want
Well, hold
kids
on.
to be.
Can I finish making my point though, real quick?
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
you
No,
can't.
no.
No,
So
absolutely
anyway,
not.
my point about that is
Please,
that
I'm sorry.
like you have to what should happen is that like college and probably high school too needs to prepare you to learn how to learn and learn how to adapt in your career and find those opportunities. Because I went from okay, I thought I was going to be an archaeologist. I ended up getting a history degree. I went into politics, realized I hated being in professional politics a
Oh,
lot,
God, I don't blame you.
and it's terrible. And then I worked in retail, and then I worked in like as an office admin, and then I worked in fundraising, and then I worked in marketing, and now I work in like marketing slash software. Like,
Are you good at fundraising?
yeah, I was pretty decent at it. I was okay.
So
I was really bad at my last fundraising job. I stunk at that, but
were you self-employed trying to fundraise for your own campaign? Because that I found
no.
to be really hard. I just didn't like asking for money from people. But
I do not mind asking for money. I have a
oh, okay.
philosophy on it, like, and I always tell any political candidate, and I'll say this, like, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for money. Like, just remember, like, if they share the goals that you do, and
Yeah.
you are sincere in working hard to make those goals happen, like, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for that support. But
Yeah,
that's
so let me put this out there, Kevin. My life experience not that different from yours in a way, but I was kind of more of a like a I want to say a little bit of a rednecky kid that did very high school was relatively easy for me without a lot of effort. I got good grades, and everybody's like Tim, go to college, go to college, go to college, and I'm like, why? And I did go to college, and like I'm looking back and I'm like, I could have done like, I don't know, man. Like there was a decision there. I kind of worked full time when I went to college, never took it very seriously. And I just don't think that college was ever really my thing. So what it did help me with is like when we want to talk about philosophers and science and stuff like that, I have a maybe a better vocabulary,
yeah.
maybe a better vocabulary than someone else who's as interested as me.
Thank God
But
college prepared you to be a podcaster, Tim.
yeah, well, that could be it, man.
Where would we
That's
be without that?
but that only took 35 years to get here. Like that's kind of like I
Long
wish
game.
I'd have figured out podcasting a lot sooner. So
Yeah.
I'm saying for me, and I went to a decent university. I've never been convinced that that was the route I should have went. Like I didn't want to go. There was some thoughts of going to law school, and I'm like, do I want to be a lawyer? And then like the answer was no. I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to go to courtroom. I don't want to wear suits and ties and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
don't want to do any of that. Not for any amount of money. Not for $500 an hour. Not for $10,000 an hour. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that's
$10,000 an hour
I mean,
does
that sounds pretty nice.
maybe I would do it.
Those are but in college, I was convinced my career path, like for the first couple years, is going to be like college professor, and I started preparing myself to go the PhD route. And then I
Mhm.
figured out that like, oh, it takes like 15 years of being an adjunct professor much of the time before you can get like a decent, solid, stable job. And I was like, no, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There were
Shelley
no
says there are no.
podcasts 35 years ago.
Yeah,
I know.
I know.
But I prepared
Kidding.
for this day my entire
That's
life.
right. Didn't
Today.
even
You
know.
guys are so lucky.
So I'm gonna get to this comment from Steven here, and then I'm gonna talk about like what the other guests talked about on the show. So Steven says, why aren't colleges teaching students their major? All the elective courses are not necessary. And to this to say, like, maybe like I'm actually kind of a fan of like liberal arts degrees, like generally. Like I think it's a good thing to see things from new perspectives, right?
I
And
agree with
and
that.
and like
This podcast.
exactly. But like, like I would be an advocate of this. Like I was on my college's curriculum committee. So there's a student representative and then all the like division heads there, the faculty division heads. And like, we kind of talk about this stuff. And it's like sometimes having a chemistry degree in which you have like some English history, in like other like more rounded background can be helpful in like thinking of new approaches to problems. And for instance, like history, like when taught well and taught by my professors at college, it was taught well. I was like, okay, how do you gather evidence to build an effective and convincing narrative, right? Like that's what like history, when it's done well, ought to be. And
Sure.
you can apply that situation to chemistry when you're trying to build a narrative around like why some development that you're trying to pursue or some research you're trying to do can be effective. So it can make you a more rounded student. Now there's a bunch of fluff in there. Like I'm not totally disagreeing with that, but
Right.
I like that. And my other point about that too, which kind of transitions to my discussion with the guests, is like, it's great if you want to do that. You should also bear the cost of like making the investment in yourself in getting that degree and making yourself a well-rounded person.
Yeah.
Because again, I agree that the loan system can be kind of predatory, but also like if we're going to move ahead with whatever system we have, if there are real reforms, I'm doubting there's going to be, but if there are real reforms, you should still have to bear the cost of going to college. You should just be informed of like what the risks and potential payoffs of doing that are. And
I'm
my
hard to
guess
argue that. I agree.
that
I agree with everything you're saying there.
yeah, the other guest was like, well, everyone should get this experience. We have to go to college because that's the only way we can become well-rounded. That's the only way we can truly understand the world is we have to go to college and we have to spend 4 years finding ourselves. And I'm like, what, dude, why on earth should anyone else have to pay for you finding yourself for 4 years? Do you have any idea how out of touch that sounds? Again, this is a nice enough
They
guy, but I'm
don't.
like,
Yeah,
dude, like that's wildly out of
society's
touch.
right. Society, it's not out of touch with the modern system that we're seeing developed in society. That's the issue. Even if you and I wake up 100 people today and they wake up 100 people tomorrow, it's still going to take a long time to get people to realize that. And for I so we go back to when I was a kid, that was the mantra everybody said you should bear some, you take your risk, you bear your expenses, and you move forward through life. That narrative has gone by the wayside.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
gone.
so much of it, like again, like you do have some agency and you do have some responsibility, and like you should be able to take on some risk and reap the rewards of you taking those risks, like going to college. Again, the prices are distorted. There's a lot of predatory stuff in here, but
Yeah.
in a system that's working well, that should still be a factor in you choosing to pursue college. And you could choose to pursue the private school liberal arts degree and like take the risk of doing that, or go very straightforward certification, like whatever. And there are pros and cons to going either of those routes. But again, no one owes you that experience of being in what is essentially a summer camp in some schools. And I say that about my school too, like great education experience, but it felt like a summer camp at times. We I'm not kidding, Tim. We literally would like form a circle around a tree and sing songs several times a year. But
We had events like that, but the SUNY Bampton was a little bit more like cutthroat. There were a lot of people that were convinced they were going to be lawyers, and a lot of people that were
yeah,
confident and working towards being doctors. So there was a lot of we ain't got time for that shit. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
going on. Like we're
Wh-
not playing those games, and we'd have parties every once in a while. And but my group of friends, several of them became lawyers, several of them became doctors, and that's all well and good. And here I am, just doing what I've always done, working
Yeah.
construction. So I,
But
I get it, man. It's just
yeah. Then
I
again, and the other point is like it like I don't disagree with the sentiment. Again, I like liberal arts. I think that literature and history and or even like if you're in another degree, like understanding science like helps you be a more rounded person. It's a matter of who pays for it. And like, well, the only way you can get that experience is through college. And like, why isn't high school teaching? Why aren't our public school systems teaching that experience? And why can't you do that on your own? Does it need to, can it only happen through the state paying for it? No,
yeah,
absolutely not. You can go and just do that. Like no one's
you can.
stopping you.
You can. And I'll just reiterate one point that I didn't think I got to make because I started making it and I was interrupting a point you were making.
Yeah.
I would like to see some sort of program in high school that even early on, starting in 7th or 8th grade, where kids just kind of explore. And I know they have had and have certain concepts like this, but I think that they could do a better job of kids figuring out younger what they want to be. And that should be part of the educational system, but that's not how the
Yeah.
financing for the educational system works. Like
Yeah.
they
And like a
don't
lot more hands-on learning type of thing too.
kind of,
And
but give them an
yeah.
opportunity, right? Give that egghead who's straight A student an opportunity to say, well, maybe this is for me and maybe this isn't. And they try to move in that direction, but they never break fully in that direction. And I just want to see that be a solid piece of the educational system. Like, do you like this? Don't you like this? Do you want to try writing a newspaper article? Try doing this, try doing that. Like
Yeah.
a little bit hands-on, a little bit experience oriented. And I know they try, and I know that like we try to teach kids a lot of stuff and we're failing miserably. So
Yeah.
adding one more thing to try to teach them is probably a problem. But still, I think that there's something to that. A system like what Larry suggests and is arguing for would add
Hmm.
that dimension to it. You would be like, hey, here's your first 10 years of schooling. Here's 2 years where you go try shit to figure out who you are and what you want to be. And then here's a couple more years of you get to do that, start that, whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I I like that. Again, I think there should be more of that hands-on learning aspect of it, which again, some schools are good about it. Like I was lucky in my high school, I did get a little bit of that.
Right. Good.
Because I worked in the Children's Museum of Utica, and I also worked at Colgate with the archaeology department. So I did do that. Like I did like the cataloging part of it, which is fine, and I like that. But you
Yeah.
know, and so that stuff was cool, and other people got to do those other hands-on experiences in the medical field, and schools
Yeah.
should do more of that. So like it is out there, like it's not non-existent, but it probably starts too late. We didn't get that opportunity till like senior year.
It
Um,
should. Yeah.
and
I
and
get.
there is other stuff too, like with like there. I don't know how it is right now, but like there was like a bunch of like stigma around like going to BOCES. Like going to BOCES was seen as like, and again, I had friends who were this, but I was like, oh, you couldn't like hack it in regular school, so you had to go to like trades. Like there was a lot of like people who thought that way, and they had a very not nice name for people who went to BOCES. Um,
Nerds. Oh, Bose. I went to Bose's, by the way.
yeah, and
I went
and
to
but
Bose's
like
actually to learn computer programming because there was a little bit there that I thought maybe I wanted to be a computer programmer, and it was actually a program they offered at our Bose's. So I went there and I took it. So, guys, I
yeah,
know how to program computers. I
oh,
know
nice.
things about basic programming
Yeah, but like, and again, there were
35
great.
years
There's
ago.
computer programming courses that they had in BOCES. I think my brother did that one, and like there's construction trades. Again, some people who were like highly math oriented might have been better off going that route and like thinking about things from an engineering perspective rather than being in the classroom and getting
I,
that practical hands-on experience instead of taking pre-calc.
can
Could have
I
actually gone out and like done
can
some
I
of that
just
stuff.
say that it would be nice to have engineers that have a little bit more on-site experience than just drawing pictures? I just from my entire life, I just wanna say that, like,
Yeah, oh, I'm
an
sure.
engineer is important, guys. They help you meet certain requirements for safety and certain requirements for performance, but sometimes they could do a little better with understanding the plans that they lay out.
Yeah. Whereas
It
there's
just
between,
be a
planning
little bit
and
more intuitive
execution.
about how the job is supposed to go.
Yeah.
Let's
So
just say
again,
that.
I said that kind of my point is like that stuff is super valuable. And but there's at the time when I went to high school, still some like kind of cultural stigma associated with that. Like again, you couldn't do this stuff. And I hope that continues to erode. Um And because like again, these are valuable skills and people could do that and in theory should be able to go right into a career. Although sometimes like some careers, even in like hands-on trades, are still like we still want you to have a 4-year degree type of stuff, which is I don't know, a little bit silly at times.
Yeah.
Uh a couple other things that stood out on that show too
Yeah.
is one the other guest like did not care that I was like, hey, this plan is unconstitutional. And he's like, yeah, like it doesn't matter, like we got to do what we got to do, and like we're going to help people in the meantime, and the Republicans are just going to shoot down anything anyway, so like why should we care? And I kind of like I'd already made a point about being unconstitutional, so I was just like, yeah, I already made that point. So and that's I know that's shocking that you would admit to that, so I'm just going to leave that out there.
We have, but it's not shocking. That's the see, that's
Yeah,
where it's not. People are like, yeah, of course it's unconstitutional. And of course the jerks are going to fight it and try to throw it in a basket based on some dead document from 1776.
yeah,
And like that's it's a real problem. People
yeah.
don't seem to
And
understand it. And how do
the
we make
point
them?
the point
I want to
I like
force them to understand it,
I
Kevin.
know, right? Not no force, Tim. Come on. But the
I
point
get
I
it.
wish I had made about that was like I wish I had said like, hey, yeah, it's unconstitutional and that's bad, and it's bad when Donald Trump did unconstitutional stuff. It's bad when Obama did unconstitutional stuff. Like consistency in law matters, rule of law matters,
Mhm.
and it is a problem when an executive exceeds the authority allowed for them by law, and we should continue to be concerned about that because again, you saw if you and I'm on a show for like four progressives, like if you were concerned about Trump's use of executive authority, what happens when someone who is more competent comes in and may use their executive authority in an even more extreme way, like someone like Ron DeSantis, right? He
Yeah.
might use his executive authority in a more aggressive way than what Trump did.
Can I answer that question?
Yeah,
Okay, people cheer their side of the authoritarian spiral. That's what's happening in our society right now. And literally, It freaking terrifies me. Okay,
Yeah. Wait, and
trapped
this guy
in
straight
an
up admitted it.
authoritarian devolution of society. It's scary
Yeah.
to see.
He's like, yeah, all that matters is getting power for your own side. And like,
I
yeah, dude, that's bad. Like that's not a great thing. And you're descending into the illiberalism that's destroying our country. And then I didn't make that point like live on the show, and I wish I had.
right.
Again,
Are
that
you ready for the segue into Dark Brandon?
yeah, that's a
The
good one.
issue
Again, just real quick, like listen to the show. Like he also makes points like, yeah, straight up, like we're gonna buy the support of Democratic voters, and like that's what we should do. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like it seems weird that you'd admit to that on the radio, but
They don't care.
cool.
They're beyond caring. They think they're accurately doing what they think they're supposed to do, and that's buy votes with government money. Like
Yeah.
it's just.
Yeah,
And
usually
look,
you put a nice veneer on it, you polish that turd, and you're like,
yeah,
no, we're just doing the right thing. And he's like, yeah, no, we're gonna buy votes.
that's what we're doing. It's like, and that's okay. You're gonna like it. It's gonna be
He's like,
good for you.
Republicans do it all the time, and I'm like, what?
That's
No, that
exactly the
doesn't-
argument, man.
That doesn't make it
Holy
okay.
shit. Holy shit, that's exactly the argument, bro. It's so awful. So the tweets, first one attracted me to the Dark Brandon story. Okay, was tweets from the other side saying, who are we going to elect that's going to have like the wherewithal to punish our enemies? And I'm like, oh, this is so freaking bad. It's like, so that of course led me to checking out the whole speech, which, guys, it's like, it has moments of awfulness, but I said this before. Joe Biden can be a decent orator at times. I'm not sure what kind of like this was. Some of the reaction to the speech is a little bit overblown. Some of
Yeah.
it's not though, because he is an authoritarian, and like he uses the argument that democracy, like is to the march of the boot is like a good thing, and it's like, God, individual rights are way more important than what you're saying, and look, he trashed MAGA Republicans, which is like. Okay, I want that to stop. I think it's toxic poison, but I do see like the reactions from the other side, and I'm like, okay, well, like we're almost in a war, and the authoritarian spiral is not serving anybody. It's falling the frick apart, and it's getting worse. At least on social media, it's getting worse. What do you think about that? You concerned about
that last point's important because on social media it's worse than like what it is in real life. Most people are not people on Twitter. Like that's.
Are you sure?
To keep in mind.
Are you sure?
I don't. Most people are not weird politicos. They're just trying to go along to get along. Like again, they're just trying to live their lives. But it's not to say that a handful of noisy, demagogues on the left and the right can't do a lot of damage to the country and direct policy. Because they certainly are and have.
Right.
But that's not, I don't think that's most people. Most people are not that.
Well, most people are kind of apolitical. They decided to roll with a team color or a particular brand of boot leather, and that's the brand of boot leather they roll with. And so, I mean, fuck them for not thinking it through more, but like that's what they're doing, right? Like, and obviously not the people in our audience, and not most libertarians, but like they're even on social media, that small amount of cheering that I see without any criticism or self-reflection concerns me. Like we're empowering these clowns, these psychopaths with our votes, and they're going to do shitty stuff that they already have, and they're going to continue to do shitty stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. And so let me back up now. I'll go back to like the speech and like what it could have been and like what I would have hoped to see. Right, again, you're right. Joe Biden is not as bad of an orator as like folks on the right make him think. Like he has moments where he's good. He knows he has been in politics long enough to know like how to like rile his side up and push the right buttons and speak to like flowery American values, and he tries to do that. Where I feel like he fell short is he could have like genuinely talked about like the problems of political violence going on in like other places too, in places like Portland where there's still often riots there, the political violence that happens on the left and the right, just saying it's unacceptable, and because it felt a bit campaigning because he wanted to be like Trump and MAGA and blah blah blah. Again, I don't totally disagree that like the behavior of extreme individuals from the nationalist right is a problem, right? Like I don't totally disagree with that because there's
Wait till
some folks to do
go ahead.
extreme stuff, right? Like
Wait till the nationalist right and the nationalist left find an issue to agree on,
yeah.
and then either the Libertarian
Well,
Party
they
will
already
be
have.
made into a success, or it's going to be awful. It's going to
Yeah,
be
well, I
awful.
mean, they do in many cases. Like,
I know, I know.
what did Biden do? Like, where he's like, the MAGA right wants to stop us from making stuff in America, and I'm like, what? the white nationalists and the MAGA crew want to stop you from making stuff? No, they don't.
I think he's deflecting from the fact that he just like
What are you talking about?
levied a 15% corporate tax, and like that's going to chase
Well,
companies out of the
he also like he renewed like quite a few new tariffs, including tariffs in China, which is like Trump's big thing, right? Like again, they agree on this stuff. Like the union left.
I guess wait till they realize that they agree on these things. That's I guess what I'm trying to say. Like I
Well,
don't think they
it was fun,
realize
and I
it.
made this point on the show when I was on the local NPR affiliate too. It was like Donald Trump also pitched like student loan forgiveness. I'm like Joe Biden and Donald Trump are not as far apart as you think they are. They're happy to use their executive power to like please their constituents and limit
Devalue the
trade and abuse
devalue the
executive
currency.
power, do all this stuff. Yeah,
And devalue the currency and lower the
devalue the
standard of
currency.
living for
Yep, yep.
everyone while keeping their buddies chugging along making money.
Yeah,
So
like they're willing to do all that stuff again.
we're very willing to
Yeah.
do that.
So yeah, Joe Biden's speech, other than like the look, which is I don't know what they're hoping to achieve with the dark red lighting and the marine flank, and
That gave me a visceral gut reaction that I had to both mock and spread the word about because I took a cinema. I don't know if you guys know this, but I took a cinematography class in college, along with many other classes. And what they were trying to do there was illustrate his power and make him look very powerful. And like that was absolutely freaking creepy to me. The
it
whole
was
thing
creepy.
was absolutely disgustingly and guys on a world scale, like embarrassing. Okay, like I was embarrassed to see the president of the United States enjoy looking like that to the whole world. I was. Am I the only one? I can't be the only one, Kevin. That was
No, no,
embarrassing, man. Dork
no, a
Brandon,
bunch of
that
people.
that that more than anything he said, the backdrop and the imagery made me angry
Well,
and react.
I even think we ended up explaining like what the heck we mean by like dark Brandon, like exactly
Yeah.
what it is. And so it's like a meme, right? Like people made these memes of like Joe Biden being like powerful and just like doing whatever he can to like
And
fight
further
the
the power
right
in the
and
peak.
seize power. Yeah, and so like you got Joe Biden with like dark shadowy things, and he's got like the glow eyes and stuff like so.
Yeah.
That's like dark Brandon stuff. Even though
Yeah,
like
okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry that I didn't explain that. Maybe people don't pay as much
No,
attention to
it's
memes.
a very internet thing. Again, like
Okay.
I don't think maybe the people listening on the show, but like most people probably aren't like, oh yeah, I understand like weird left wing praising Joe Biden Twitter memes, right? Like
Oh, the left can't meme, I'll be honest with you. I think that libertarians are the best meme artists out there, and I
oh
think
sure.
that
No, I actually I think Dark Brandon's like it's not something I agree with, but like it probably is a good meme. Like it generated a lot of enthusiasm on the left. But like to me, I'm like, man, if we're gonna do Dark Brandon, like at least could he do something cool, like pardon all the people in jail for drug offenses or something like if you're gonna
could
do
we do
something
that?
mad to make the right do something to make the right mad, like
Like,
just do something cool and constitutional at the same
do you
time. Yeah.
remember the Ilian Gonzalez story? Like, the only time a president has cared about fathers' rights was when it was a Cuban national wanting his kid back from America, and here we are, like, it's the same thing when it comes to this Griner situation. The only thing he cares about is that she's in prison in Russia for 9 years. Not that there's millions of people in trouble for selling stuff. It's a ridiculous sham that
Yeah.
people fall for all the time. Like, the people love they love the boot leather, man. If they think they're wearing the boots, they love it. It's just weird. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, you're right though. Again, like it is not a great thing that Brittany Garner's in prison. Joe
It's
Biden,
not.
if you think it's terrible that she's away from her family, there is something you can do about it for the thousands of people who are in prison right now who are away from their families for the exact same reason.
But then the prison system won't make any money, Kevin. And like, even if though it's a not-for-profit prison system, it still is like a system supported by laws that
Yeah,
punish victimless crime. And that's sad.
it is sad.
So,
Yeah.
Dork Brandon, did we cover it? Should
Dark
we?
Brand, yeah, I think we covered it. You know,
Again, though,
again,
I mean, to spin in a circle, that guy can speak a little bit. And demonizing the MAGA Republicans, I don't know if that's going to be an effective strategy, but it may be because people want to be afraid, and then they want to be afraid. They want to be made to feel safe. So he's making them feel safe
yeah.
against.
Well, again, I think he's like kind of building up some of this stuff to be like bigger than it is because he wants the Democrats to be motivated by the threat of all Republicans being associated with like the worst part of like the Trump cult, right? But at the same time, the Democratic Party is funding these Trump candidates. You know, again, like the guy who beat Peter Meyer, like he was a Trump candidate. The Democrats poured a boatload of money into that race to support the guy who was running against the Republican who voted to impeach Trump. It's same with the Pennsylvania governor, same with like all these races across the country. The Democrats keep funding the worst of them because they're like, oh yeah, like we'll just prop up this one candidate and they'll be such a bad candidate that like of course our candidate like Hillary Clinton will win. How'd that work out?
And you know who all loses? We all lose.
All of us lose.
We all lose.
You
man.
have like a Democrat candidate who's too crappy to like beat any Republican candidate other than maybe the most extreme version, and then you might get the extreme version anyway. And yeah,
there's no winning in this situation. So again, like moving on, the authoritarian spiral terrifies me. I think we're trapped in it. There was a little bit of a, let's unify around being afraid of MAGA Republicans, and I'm not. I like them. I don't care. Like, I know that their optics are imperfect. I get it, but they're human like me. They're human like you, and there's a lot of Democrats that are also human. It's just we've lost touch with being able to communicate about humanity. Where a lot of MAGA Republicans and I particularly coincide is that they see the absolute farce that our virtuous ruling class dumps in our laps all the time. Like it, and it's not I'm not supporting Donald Trump. Libertarians, don't get all your knickers in a knot here. It's different. Okay. They see some similar problems that I do. And I think that we all do.
Yeah. No, it's fair. And again, it's if I can get folks to see solutions that don't require force, it'd be great.
Just think it through a little. That's all I'm asking. Just get to the other side of that emotional reaction that Joe Biden just tried to put. There were some threats there. There was some language there that if I was a particularly MAGA Republican, and some of it like the aims and the goals that I align with, like pro Second Amendment stuff like that. There's a real threat to that. Like we're supposed to unify or else. We're supposed to accept his version of democracy or else. And that to me is a real problem. Okay. Like that's where I'm not sure he'll put his boot, the blue boot, on anybody's neck. And the next guy with the red boot is going to put that on everybody else's neck. And that's a problem for me.
Yep. And so on and so forth. And it spirals down. Well, the other side did this, and
so that's what we do, and that's what the conversation's around. You like the Rush quotes?
Yeah.
Patty Blanchard: the trees keep voting for the axe and saw because their handles are wood, so they must have their best interests at heart. It's an old Turkish proverb, and Rush adapted it into a song somewhere along the lines. It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for a comment, Patty. And so. I don't know. I don't know if we want to talk about Joe Biden stuff anymore. Again,
He's giving
I
me a
know.
headache, and I got a beer in my belly. That's
Yeah.
just not right. It's not
So
right.
it wasn't as bad as people like. Again, the optics were something I didn't particularly like, and some of the messages didn't like. I didn't think it was like the worst thing ever, but
I
people are
think the
freaking
imagery
out.
was
But
amongst the worst ever. I think
yeah,
the imagery was awful. I
yeah, it's
think the
not.
messaging and
Yeah,
demonizing.
like I said, they're trying to make him look powerful because that is his like that's part of that, and that's part of the Dark Brandon meme thing is like Joe
Sure.
Biden appears weak at times. He's a dude who fell off his bike. He's a dude who stumbles over his words. He's the dude who like wears his mask, like walking around by himself outside. Like,
Shakes hands with the air. These things all
yeah,
happen.
like just
You don't know what kind
goofy
of drugs they
stuff.
hooked him up on, but he gave a nice speech.
Yeah, and again, so like you do this, you put him, with red behind him, you embrace the Dark Brandon stuff, you get aggressive, like that makes him look more powerful and therefore more capable of leading the party over the next couple of years,
Yeah.
which makes it seem like maybe he's, going to try to run again,
Yeah.
probably much to most of the Democratic Party's chagrin, but
I mean, if his treatments work, because he's obviously something's going on there, because just a wide variation in his ability to perform. I think that there's some medication involved. I don't
could
even
be.
mean to be. I don't even mean to make allegations that I think are just to spuriously like deride him. I think that that is a real thing.
No, sure. Like there are times, where it's like he doesn't seem sharp, and that's worrying for.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, I mean, like again, and Trump had like a lot of his moments too, but like unlike Obama, who was usually most of the he was very sharp, and like
He was clean and articulate, according to Biden.
yes,
I mean, I'm just saying.
boy, bringing it. No, that's a quote from him. You're right.
It's
Uh,
just
said, or
so
I mean, like we've had a lot of goofball presidents. Again, like George Bush,
yeah.
like he'd be affable and sometimes not sharp at times. He'd use
Yes.
self-deprecating humor to like
Cover how what a
yeah,
buffoon.
him making goofball mistakes. And again, and I say that not to diminish like the actual terrible stuff that guy did, but that was his way of covering it more effectively. So anyway, yeah, I know you wanted to talk about Brandon has officially filed his re-election campaign.
Yeah.
Did he? It seemed like that's where he was
Yeah, it
going.
does seem like that. I agree.
Yeah,
Thanks, Steve.
but
I do want to talk about banning the internal combustion engine. I do
and
want to
why you're
talk
in
about
favor? Yes.
well, no, I'm probably not in
I'm kidding.
favor for the most part. Again, this is an issue of government force. Okay, like certainly there's room for greener energy. There's room for um, electric cars becoming part of mainstream society. There's room for that, but they are going to lack a distinctive amount of effectiveness in northern climates. That's a reality. Okay, that force is a problem. That force makes people hate things, and that
Mhm.
banning things is a bad idea. When all we do is create another system to enrich politicians for getting the right laws written. That's right now where green energy is at. Right now, California just decided to and hilariously, guys, decided to ban electric cars. And then about 48 hours, they make this decision. About 48 hours later, they're like, hey, don't turn up your thermostats or we're going to cause blackouts. And please don't charge your electric cars
Yeah.
between 24 hours a day, whatever. And it's like, like people have got to see that as a problem. It
Yeah.
got
Again, like the electric cars make up such a small amount of the market, like, and you're asking
1%
folks to
right now,
not
less than 1%.
charge
Yeah.
their electric vehicles because of grid stress. Like, what
1%.
happens when they're 50% of the market, or your goal is them being 100% of that market, right? Again,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
yeah. So like if you have another plan to like get people to like use more effective public transit, but like California does not have their plan, no matter how much money they throw at that particular problem, they have other issues that make building effective public transit in California just wildly prohibitively expensive.
It's a big state.
Yeah, it is a big state. But even in the major cities, like there's so many barriers to being able to build stuff that like it can't get done. It's just crazy expensive. Like the high speed rail lines, like, okay, you've got to appease every single town along the way. Plus, you've got to do like these super expensive environmental reviews. Plus, you've got to use like certain types of like union labor to be able to do that. And it's thing on thing on thing on thing that like any one of those might not be the deal breaker, but all together, you can't have this replacement for that. So okay, we're gonna have electric cars, but same things. Like, okay, well, we're going to close down our nuclear plants, or we're going to try to ban the use of like carbon producing energy production plants in the state. Well, we still need that energy though, so now it needs to come from out of state, and the grid isn't stable enough on the renewables to be able to provide all of the energy when it is needed.
Yeah.
Once again, that's the issue with that stuff, is like it doesn't, because it needs to be produced like as it's being consumed. There's always that mismatch, and there isn't they're removing the systems that can fill the gap when there's a mismatch between demand for power and generation of power at the same time.
I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head so many different ways there. One of the big problems is when the progressive left stands in the way of great ideas and making them cheaper and more affordable. That's a constant narrative we hear. And one of the things that concerns me, and I think it concerns almost everybody who hears this promise of a greener future, at this stage, there is no doubt that the greener future means less for every single American alive right now. Okay, it means less productivity, it means less food, it means less this, it means more bike riding. And no one wants it. Nobody in rural America wants to be forced to ride their bike to the store that's non-existent within 10 miles. Okay, like that's the problem with how they're doing this. Yes, I even want a greener future. Yes, I believe in alternative sources. I think we're getting nowhere without a real solid
Yeah.
discussion about nuclear, but you and I have talked about it a million times with people that agree with us, people
Yeah.
that are afraid of it are like, "You can't put a
It's coming
nuclear
around.
reactor in my backyard."
Yeah,
What's that?
it's coming around. The
Well,
nuclear
I hope
stuff.
so. And look, guys, the United States, one of the richest countries in the world, without a doubt, because we have as many nuclear producing electric places as any other country in the world, like per capita. Okay, and we look at the problems of South America and people flowing over the border to the United States. They don't believe in nuclear power down there. They fight it tooth and nail, and that's one of the issues, guys. Like, they don't have enough access to developing power to develop things and put air conditioning in their homes and use it to make things other than drugs, okay? Like, that's was
Yeah.
that I don't wanna be racist, but I feel like that's something that
Well,
we
no,
should
I mean,
talk
again,
about.
if the like agricultural production of like drug raw materials is lucrative because people don't see any other alternative given the resources of their country and the infrastructure of their country. Yeah,
Okay,
that like
that's
that's
what I'm saying. That's
you
what I'm
know,
saying.
yeah, I know what you meant there,
Okay.
and but I kind of agree with you, like in the sense that like yeah, the way progressives envision the green future is people using less, and I don't think it needs to be that way. And again, I
I
think you and I
agree.
are like we can have a future that where there's less polluting technologies, where there are other opportunities for transportation, et cetera, and it doesn't have to mean sacrificing like how we're living now. Like we can use technology to like figure our way out of this stuff. But there's these folks who, and again, these are dangerous folks that like we talked about when we talked about the World Economic Forum stuff.
Right.
It's like the people who are like who think that we need to have negative GDP, who think that we need to have a decline in society, the
Birth rates, they
negative
want a
growth
decline in birth
folks.
rates. They want
Yeah,
less and less and less. They want you to do less
because
for the environment.
yeah, because like they believe like that is the only way for us to like save the earth, and like it's just not true. Like there's demonstrable evidence that like we don't need to do that. There are things that we can and ought to do better, but the decline in like growth of the economy means a lot of people get hurt in the meantime. And they're not thinking they're the ones that are going to get hurt, but like
Well, they probably won't be if they're part of the group that's the in group that's advocating for it. But I mean, Stalin killed all of the communists that brought him to power just because they
yeah,
were in the
right.
way, and he kept the productive, plebeians of society, and said, "All you guys that helped me get here, See you later, suckers. Your
Yeah.
bullshit will not stand. I'm an authoritarian, and that's the way it goes.
No. So like listen, those people, the people talk about that. Like I'm trying to remember the book. I had this guy as a guest on my show one time. His name was Andrew something, and he's like, hey, like read these books. Like you give me a couple books, I'll give you a couple books. And there's one he gave me about like why we need like negative growth, and I'm like, no, this is monstrous. Like this is gonna kill people. Like
Right.
no, not at all.
People will starve from it. They're
Yeah,
there's very real, like,
it doesn't.
the societal turmoil going on right now in the Ukraine and Russia, like, it is probably gonna continue this upward trend in food prices.
Yeah,
Um,
no,
this is real, guys. People, are gonna be less food if you have, like, or you're gonna have less heat. Like, all of
yeah,
these things are real. Heat having BTUs available outside your house versus having BTUs coming in over a thin line, like, it only makes sense to have, at the very least, both systems to keep your house warm. Like, to talk about putting your children at risk because of a failure in the electric grid, that's scary, and people are upset about it, and I don't blame
yeah.
them because it
That's
doesn't make
understandable.
sense.
So, I mean, let's go back to the California thing real quick. So, like, this is kind of one of my hey, because I don't think it is like cynical from every politician. I don't think like everyone's just like, yes, I'm gonna collect the sweet electric car like kickbacks from this. I think most people who like the average rank and file, lefty who supports this type of thing is like, yes, like this is a good thing to clean up our future. And again, my problem with that, my problem with the student loans, my problem with a lot of this stuff is they don't think past the initial like thing to think of the long-term consequences of that stuff. And that's a problem again. Oh, like we're going to solve this problem. Great. What happens when you have all these new cars on the grid? What happens if we don't have the infrastructure in place to be able to like do the mining operations domestically to supply these cars? What happens if like people just can't get vehicles anymore or they become prohibitively expensive in California? Who is that going to hurt? It's not going
Poor
to hurt.
people and the
Yeah,
middle class,
yeah,
that's who it's
it's
gonna hurt.
exactly that's who it's just gonna make it harder for, and they'll be like, well, like we'll improve public transit. I'm like, okay, well, to do that, you have to fix all this other nonsense too, including like your ridiculous, way overdone environmental reviews and NIMBYism and like, okay, you want to solve this problem? Sure, let's talk about it. Like, don't put on this ridiculous band-aid solution and we'll figure out how to get there later. Like, let's talk through all the solutions. And most of those solutions, the way to make them work is to just make it easier for people to do stuff and get the government out of the way.
Every
They don't
single
like that.
time.
That's it.
It's
That's the
great for
ideological block.
politician. So check it out. We even got, like, and I want to give a shout out, like, my friend Brian LaRusso, once again. He researches our local senator because he really doesn't think that he should be senator. So this guy is this legislation that's happening in California is everywhere. Okay, it's been voted on in New York State. We've got our guy in from rural central New York, who at the very least he could take a stand against force. Okay, against force. That's all I'm asking. Just take a stand against force, right? Instead, votes for and co-sponsors New Deal legislation in New York that will eliminate the internal combustion engine by 2035 for individual use. Okay, your tractor trailers and stuff like that, they'll get to keep using internal combustion for another 10 years. But that kind of shit, people like that have to go. Okay, and he's not even not a nice guy. It's just he's clueless about the realities of a constituents. And I had to get that out there, Kevin. I had to have
Yeah.
at least one epic rant tonight, and that is the kind of shit we've got to stand against.
No, it's true. And again, there are ways that we can move towards technology. Do the okay, I mean, California already had that a little while ago. Like, okay, we want to remove the 2-cycle engines to like the lawnmowers and that type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You could do that, but that destroys a lot of value in the process, or just people are starting to phase those out anyway for electric lawn equipment because the technology is getting better, the batteries are getting better, it's getting cheaper anyway. And that's fine. Like I support that. Like again, my next lawnmower is probably going to be an electric one.
I have an electric lawnmower. I have
Yeah.
one. It's perfect for my yard. My yard is I also have 2 riding lawnmowers for a different place,
Yeah.
but I have an electric lawnmower for my yard. I'm very happy with it. It does the job incredibly. It's super quiet. It's light, and like it has a little collection bag, and I can dump that over the bank and add to my soil on the bank. It's just look, that it's good. Okay. It
Yeah.
charges us in an hour. It mows my lawn in the same amount of time it took me with my gas mower. I'm not kidding you. My lawn looks nicer because it's literally gentler on the grass. Like it doesn't rip it up and blow it around. Like it actually works. And I think that is something that's an answer, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a solution. Okay, I'm already using 2 gallons less of gas per year because it only took me about 2 gallons a year to mow my lawn. But
I think I
still,
mow my
this
lawn like
lawnmower is pretty
3
hot.
times a year, but
Yeah,
so it won't
right?
make much of a difference for me. And I'm gonna use my lawnmower until it dies because like why would I get new ones
Because that's how
otherwise?
you generate wealth, Kevin. I want to be
Yeah.
honest, right? You take a product, you use it for a long time, and you use it for longer than your neighbor, and you're gonna have more money than them. I go through this
Mhm.
argument with all my friends who have get $60,000 trucks, and they make fun of my $5,000 Taurus that's broken, but from deer smashing into it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that I don't owe a dime on that car, and I don't care what it looks like. I'm sorry, like I've got no ego associated with driving a vehicle, man.
I drive a bright orange Prius when I do drive, and I'm going to like it's just
Virtuous.
about at 100,000 miles. It was a 2013 when I bought it like a couple years ago.
Yep,
I want to get that thing to at least 250,000. Like, and
I'd
that's
be
gonna
so
take me
proud
a
of you.
long time. Like, I don't want
I
that
would
thing
be
to
so
go as
proud of
long
you.
as yeah,
I'm telling you, you guys, I'm telling you, it's like wealth without risk. Okay. Using your existing stuff for as long as it will go is wealth without risk. Avoiding interest payments, avoiding like manipulative agreements with car companies where you're leasing vehicles or paying interest or you have to take your car to a dealership to get it fixed. If you avoid all of those things, you will put thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into your pocket over the course of your life. I
yeah,
promise you, I've done it. I've had choices that other people don't have because they have to make their car payment. Like,
yeah.
I'm looking forward to a couple, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks off from work. I'll be fine, guys. I don't even have to get like unemployment because I'll just be like, whatever. I drive my beat up car or my beat up truck or my wife's car, which is actually pretty nice. And I like driving that.
There you go. And one other thing though, like about like just the lawn equipment stuff, right? Like I used to work for like at a cemetery, right? And we had like the zero turn riding mowers and stuff, right? And so we would maintain all these properties, not just like the cemetery, which was like pretty substantial, but other properties too. Like
Right.
the reason why you should allow for that technology to still exist is because like the battery technology in order to be able to run those things all day 5 days a week isn't quite there like if you get
They
to a
never.
certain size.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I mean there are ways you can get around it by okay you buy a whole bunch of spare batteries, but like
That's a
it's a
big
bit tough.
investment right now.
Yeah, it's expensive to do. So like it's
You-
just easier for folks to like do that in the meantime. Again, we can have phase technology improvements that like cover a lot of the consumer use of this stuff on the commercial level might be a little and that same thing like I because I hear people talk about this occasionally with like electric tractors too. Like, okay, cool, like that's a neat thing, but you can't just like chill out for a little while you wait for your tractor to recharge sometimes. Like you just the the
It's
option of being able to refuel quickly is necessary when time is a factor.
Time is a factor for farmers, bro. Like
Yeah.
all summer long, they have to work, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. When something's ready to be put away, it's got to get put away. That's another thing that this senator from Senate District 51, and I shouldn't call him a joker because he is, as a human being, like whatever. Okay. But he's like signed on to the biodiesel plan. All right. And my farming friends have tractors that are 25 years old. Okay. So biodiesel in tractors that are 25 years old destroys the fuel pump. It destroys the seals. So these guys that are barely making a living right now have to contend with being forced to use biodiesel on the time frame much sooner than we're going to eliminate the internal combustion engine. So their equipment's going to get ruined. They're going to be forced to buy unfixable John Deeres like that they can't even work on. They have to call like again
Yeah.
these coercive agreements that people are entering into. are being forced to enter into, and we've got guys that just sign that legislation like it's like vote for it. Like there's no thought given to the human
they
being
don't.
behind this shit.
Yeah, they don't think like further than like, hey, we're gonna help the environment with this stuff, right? But it's like,
Woo!
wait, like, okay, what's the environmental impact of like the new equipment that's going to need to be produced to replace the legacy equipment? What is going to be the environmental or like the economic impact of like to these farmers? What's going to be the economic impact of like having to build these new systems to create and generate this fuel?
Yeah,
Was going to be, like all that stuff, like there, everything has trade-offs, and that's what bugs me. Well, I mean, this happens on the Republicans and Democrats too. Like there are trade-offs all down the line, and sometimes those trade-offs are worth it, but they're
sometimes they're
not
not.
always worth it.
A lot of times they're not, okay? That all of these things can be accomplished without force, all right? All of these things can be accomplished without forcing a guy who's barely making a living to be terrified about his future. And without the promise of making a coral reef with your tractor after we give you $20,000 for a $400,000 tractor. That
Yeah.
is not a real promise to an individual who has a system that they're making money off of. And guys, I'm telling you right now, just barely making money. No farmer, no individual small farmer is getting rich off of anything. Okay. When you go to your little farm stand, give them whatever they ask for and leave them a few dollars because that is fucking reality. All right. If you can afford to do it that
I
way.
forgot
And
to buy
they'll
corn
always give you
today.
a good deal, man.
I need that. You remind. I need to get some corn. It's corn
Oh my
season.
God,
I
I
haven't
got
had any
corn.
corn. I
Yeah.
have not had any corn yet, and I need some corn.
My beef guy gave me some corn. I stopped by to pay him, and then I stopped by to pay him some money, and he's like, "Hey, I got all this corn, and he's got a little farm stand set up." And so I gave him some money, and then I gave him another 20, and I'm like, "Just give me how much corn 20 bucks buys," because I was at that camping gig, and I
Yeah.
don't know, he kept giving me corn. I didn't count them, and then he gave me a bag of peaches too. So I'm just like,
Nice.
yeah, and the peaches, oh my god, dude. They're like local grown upstate New York peaches. You would have thought. They're not as big as the Georgia peach, but they are really, really
Yeah,
good.
like local peaches when they're super fresh,
Oh my god,
great stuff.
perfect. They're perfect. They were perfectly ripe. They were delicious. The grandkids went crazy for them. Everybody, it was fun. Like doing that stuff this time of year is absolutely fun. And I got to put a little virtuously for myself. I got to put a little money in my buddy's pocket, and I was glad to do it.
Yeah. No. That's
And
it's a
so
good time of year for it.
that's what virtue is going to kill. The virtuous legislation like biodiesel is going to kill opportunities like that, in my opinion. And we need to
Yeah.
knock it off.
Yeah, I
By we,
agree.
I mean you clowns, cut it out.
All right.
Stop saddling me with your virtue.
So do we, it's been do we want to do any fake news stuff?
I got one that I want to lay on you.
All right, you tell me.
You may already know because it was a pretty popular article, but I don't care. Believe it or not, Kevin, believe it or not, the illustrious, virtuous Kathy Hochul said, and I quote, and this could be fake news, this could be not fake news. Closing schools for the COVID pandemic was a mistake.
That's real.
It is real. It is real. I find it fucking hilarious. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Um
How could she have known?
I did. I kind of did a show on this, because I'm like, cool. I'm glad you came around. That's great. You came around.
Yeah.
How do we undo the test score damage that was done about this? Let's.
She's the test score damage. Honestly, it is in part the least of it. Okay, there are kids
And
that
yeah,
are
a whole bunch of the other damage too.
the kids are still, some of them are still suffering. Some of them are still trapped in an online world and haven't broken out of it. That was forced on them. They were made to feel like criminals. They were threatened with killing grandma for simply wanting to do things like play basketball in the park. They what we did to our children, and I didn't do it to my kids. My kids had freedom to go wherever they wanted. I would back them up, whatever they wanted, but still they still had to deal with the societal pressure that was laid on them by this dystopian government response to COVID. And now, years later, a clown gets to say, "Oh God, we were so wrong about that, weren't we?"
Yeah.
It's like, how do we let them get away with it? And like, she can get away with it because the choice is Lee Zeldin, and I'm not even sure if that's a real choice. Like, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Well, and I struggle with this. Like, how do we let them get away with it versus like, because again, part of me is like, well, I want to praise going to the right position, but I also don't want to leave her totally let her off the hook.
I don't want to let her off the hook at all.
I want and there's so much other stuff that's terrible. It's not like I'm gonna vote for her at all. Like she's
right. I'm writing in Larry. Okay, guys, I think that's a real option. Don't like. Okay, so not to distract from Hochul but for a second, like the standard play has already been made, and it's going to be made again. I saw a New York Post article: Lee Zeldin within 4 points of Kathy Hochul. Like, no, he's not. Sorry. Like, maybe he is, but 4% is a huge insurmountable barrier. The dude's not winning. Deal with it. We need freedom in this state. He's not the answer.
That's what it is.
Sorry, Lee Zeldin. You can come on the show and challenge my views if you want to. I'd be more than willing to have a conversation with you. But I'm telling you right now, you're not the answer. You're more of the same. You're George Pataki. That's it. George Pataki did so much liberal stuff and so much like bogus tax cutting and making pretend and buying state workers votes with better raises. Like he did all of the things that every progressive ever did. So why would we want a guy like that? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I can't disagree with you.
Yeah, I love it, Shelley. Let's let Shelley make fun of Kathy Hochul.
Yeah, Shelley says, so God told her to close schools and he changed his mind. She's listening to someone, but it's not God.
I agree. But she needs disciples to go out there and spread the word of the authoritarian clampdown on our children. God bless her. Whoa, stunning and brave, guys. Stunning and brave. It's just lovely.
So, on a related story, by the way, did you see like the White House press secretary talking about how like Democrats were responsible for reopening schools, Republicans were responsible for keeping them closed for so long?
They literally say anything they want to. They say whatever they want, and their devoted followers repeat it, and then the people that are on the fence, they have a tough decision to make, and I want them to side with liberty and do things like write in Larry Sharp and do things like reject whomever was on the ballot and won last time, who helped manage this feckless response to COVID. Like, all of these clowns contributed, almost all of them. A few of them decided to fight it. A few of them decided to fight it too late. And then now they're all going to be like, we're the ones that fought it. All of them. That's what they're going to do.
No,
it's so weird. They get to reinvent themselves all the time.
Yeah. No, again, a bunch of people like take that at face value. Like, we Democrats open school in spite of Republicans. Like, all right, listen. Yeah, the point you're making is stretching the truth to the point of being ridiculous. And anyone who's not a partisan hack like sees through that and knows like, oh yeah, like, well, listen, Democrats they closed the schools, like that's what it was. And the bluest cities like had the longest closures, and that's not really disputable by anyone who is seeking an honest answer to that question. And you could say like, well, they came around and blah blah blah, but come on, I don't know that. Like I saw that and I'm just like, that's exhausting.
We had schools kind of open in Otsego County, and they were canceling sports left and right, and it was up to the Otsego County Health Commissioner to cancel sporting events. And it was like the metric that person used was out of an abundance of caution. There was no real numbers associated with her freaking decision, but an abundance of caution. And so this person still has a job. These people are still going to get reelected, and it's embarrassing. Stand up. Damn it.
Yeah. All right. For Tim, bust a blood vessel here.
And the dog is barking in the background. Knock it off.
We'll do one more fake news item. I'll throw one out there. All right. Is it real news or fake news? Did New York State ban people under 21 from purchasing cans of whipped cream?
Okay, I know this. Yes, they did. They absolutely did. And then this is real news. Okay, but then they did a double take on it, right? They did a double take because then they said, We didn't actually mean ready whip, but look, there were people that I know that went into the stores and got proofed to buy cans of whipped cream.
Yeah.
And I went into stores and made a joke about it, and they're like, "No, we were doing that yesterday, not today. The law has been changed." And I'm like, "What a
Yeah.
victory for freedom in New York State." That's all I
It's
can
nice.
say.
Yeah, no, so like you're 100% right on that. And then the actual law, like the way they eventually came out and said it, they're like, no, we didn't actually mean to ban Ready Whip, like the cans of whipped cream. We meant to ban the nitrous oxide chargers that are for like the whipped
Commercial
cream.
whipped cream users. I don't
Yeah. So
nobody under
those you're supposed to be like, we didn't mean to ban it, but like their guidance and like the law itself was so poorly written that a bunch of stores understood that they would be punished for selling cans of whipped cream to people under 21. So
it was definitely written one more example of poorly written legislation that they'll get a pass for because they
yeah,
immediately backed away from their demands. Like,
yeah,
okay.
and it's one of those things like you know, so many people are like, oh, it's fake news that it was banned. I'm like, well, it kind of it wasn't though, because like again, if everyone understands the law to say a certain thing and starts acting as if that is the law, it kind of seems like that's a real thing. It's
Just
it
like
was bad.
such a bunch of liars,
And,
though. That
and like
that's
in the same way, like it's just sloppily lit. Like again, is it so much to ask that like if they're going to pass anything banning any certain behavior or purchase of stuff, that they can at least consider it very carefully about what they're actually intending to do? Like, is that so much? It is too much to ask,
I
isn't it,
don't
Tim?
well, I don't think you understand how virtuous it is.
Ugh,
They made that law. It doesn't have to be a clear law. They made that to protect children.
to
And
protect
so
the children.
they
Who
did it.
will think of the children?
They always think of the children, so that's their
Ugh,
job, and so they can write whatever unclear law, they can make some weird ass apology, and then everything's okay.
yeah,
They get
and
reelected.
Tim, let me ask you: is this going to prevent a single person under the age of 21 from being able to buy those canisters if they want to acquire those canisters?
Number 1, no. Number 2, what it could do is cause kids to call huff paint.
They'll just find alternatives.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, we if we wanna protect them from things, we've gotta protect them from spray paint cans too,
Yeah.
and so
Well,
this
a
law
lot of times,
law didn't go far
a lot of
enough.
times it is illegal for people under 18 to buy spray paint.
Under
I've gotten
21,
carded
though.
before.
Under 21.
Under 21.
18 to 21, you can't buy ready whip wait, you can, but you can't buy but you can still buy spray paint, and I think that's a bigger problem, and if we don't solve that problem, I I'm gonna run on that. Write me in, I will make it illegal to sell spray paint to kids under 21.
Oh my goodness, that's your anti-libertarian platform.
People love authoritarians. I'm just lying to get elected. I think that that's what's most important. That's it. I'm gonna
You
lie.
ever hear Vermin Supreme's campaign speech?
I've heard some of them. Free
Yeah, well,
police.
he has a whole thing. He's like, I am a politician. I will lie to you. I will tell you anything you want to hear, so you will vote for me, and I can get power. It's
Give me
hilarious.
power. You crazy fools, just give me power. I will solve a lot of problems by doing literally nothing and mocking those that try to do stupid shit. Like if I have that, I will sit on the floor of the New York State Assembly or Senate and drink beer and shout heckling comments until they censor me, and then I'll go to the papers and just make fun of them. Like,
Good.
which basically is what I already do on my Facebook and Twitter
Yeah,
pages.
you're gonna get censored in like 5 minutes.
Ooh,
All right, get Tim
like,
out of
would I
here.
still get paid? Because that's the important part.
Well, of course. You
Okay, well
still get
then
paid. You still get the per
there
diems.
it is.
You still get all that.
Guys, I could do this. I could definitely do that. I could do that for you, not just for me, for you.
For the children.
Yeah, well, of course. Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I meant for the children and you, but
Yeah.
mostly for the children.
All right. Do we want to get to any of these comments before we close out? Or
We should, man, because they're fire. There's great stuff out there, man.
yeah. No. So all right. Let's Let's scroll up.
I'm scrolling. For some reason, I'm stuck. There we go.
Yeah. And
I'll hit you with one first, then you hit me.
all right,
with
go
one.
ahead.
Boom. I know you're a big
Paul,
fan. I do think there was a certain amount of fear mongering back in the 70s. Paula says, I think the 70s and 80s, Paula Andrew, I think the 70s and 80s gave nuclear power a bad name with all the bad movies and press. I do think there were some issues in the 70s and 80s that did play out in the press that caused us to be even more fearful of nuclear power than we should be. We should respect it, right? We should be like, let's treat it with kid gloves. Let's use it proportionally and appropriately.
yeah. Well, like again, 3 Mile Island, like when that happened, like that could have been a serious thing. But like the good part about that is the people who were there were competent enough and the systems were good enough to like make sure that it didn't get like out of hand, right? And no one, and it worked. You know, and again, that's as compared to Chernobyl, where like people were acted in such a political way because they're so worried about like their reputations and their positions being damaged. And in addition to like some technology and testing issues and whatnot, but that went wrong. Again, it can go wrong. Like I don't think anyone denies that, but like we know enough about it where things that go wrong are pretty rare. And even when people want to cite like the Fukushima stuff, like again, the impact of that like is relatively small. No one actually ended up dying from that. Like it was a serious incident, but like it got handled relatively well for a freak situation. And you can't always plan for everything, but like
they
try to learn and do better.
They were designed to shut off, and I think that not enough is and that part of it was successful. Okay, so that's the issue with the thorium salts and things like that. These new new designs for nuclear reactors that are being put into operation in other places in the world. That the danger from them is incredibly limited. They have automatic shutoff systems that if they start getting too hot, bink, done.
Yeah,
It's off.
and it's like, and a lot of them are mechanically based rather than like electrical based. So like if they're not constantly getting a signal, you know, the like at least for like a lot of the as SMRs, like they drop the control rods in and start shutting down the reaction.
Correct.
Right. Like that's so, you know, which is good. It's nice to have like a drop dead switch because that's even if that can cause some issues by shutting down reactors, like that's the safer solution than not doing that and letting things get out of hand. And Patty also says, you know, we have a generation that grew up with an early image of nuclear energy in the hands of Mr. Burns and Homer Simpson. I mean, like honestly, that's part of it. Like people think like these plants are producing barrels and barrels every day of like bright green waste, and that's not how that works.
That is not how that works. That's not. And we I get it. Like we want a cleaner future. We don't want our neighbors and an entire city to be poisoned by nuclear radiation. And Chernobyl is a perfect example where it can happen. But there's risks that we have to take, and there's risks that make sense.
There's risk in coal plants. There's risks in like the you know, in natural gas. There's risks in like over relying on like solar grids too, and not having a way to be able to store and manage that power when there's a fluctuation of capacity or of generation capacity, right? You know, there's risk to everything. Risks and trade-offs. That's what it is.
Yeah, and we need to expand everything, not threaten to contract it. Like that's where this thing is the messaging is falling off. The global world government would like us to limit everything. And the reality is that we can have a future where we still continue to expand things. I saw some metric and I tried to track it down before the show because I was going to try to make some hay out of it today. That the actual standard of living, and it's something that you and I have talked about, that the actual standard of living has declined in the United States for the first time in a few decades. And it's because of inflation and because of the unsound monetary policy that we're experiencing and the propping up of big business. Okay. Like that taking from the middle class and the poor as a system. That's what our system does. Okay. Has finally, technological advancement has been outstripped. Our standard of living is declining.
Yeah. Well, scary thing. But
I want to find more about it, but sometimes news like that gets buried, and then you have to find it, and then you have to suss it out because it's not going to stay on the top of the news cycle when you have, you know, clown world controlling who gets to be on top of the messaging cycle. That's not a message that they, thank you, conspiracy theorist Tim, want out there.
all right. I mean, and I really don't know. They're gathering wood for heat this winter in Germany. Yeah,
Yeah, they made a bad policy, right? They shut down their nuclear plants. They're trying to refire their coal plants. Now they're thinking about refiring their nuclear plants. But I think it takes months probably to refire a nuclear plant, right?
Yeah, no, some of them like they're worried they might not be ready to go by winter. That's it's a terrifying thing. And let's see, there's the comments. Shelly says 749.8 on the odometer starting late May. I ride everywhere. Assuming you're talking about the electric bike. Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm at like
220.
I got my my
You
electric
gotta step up
bike.
your game, man.
I know. Well, I don't need to go anywhere. Again, what I do most of the day is like because I'm in softwares, I sit on my back porch with my shirt off, like doing computer stuff. So like
with a beer on your belly, I can just picture it.
Exactly. Maybe, but do what I want. And if anyone gives me any looks, I'm like, it's my yard.
Get off my lawn, you damn kids.
Exactly. But yeah, I don't have to go anywhere anymore, really. So like, there's no reason for me to ride unless I feel like going to a coffee shop to work for a bit, or like I'm meeting up with a friend or whatever. But
there's one for you.
Yeah.
Another one from Shelly.
Shelly says, yeah, there have been many people who have created cars that get really high mileage and even cars that run on water. I know 2 guys who built a carburetor that made a 70s Caddy get 80 miles per hour.
I assume she meant miles per gallon.
Yeah.
Because 80 for a Caddy is that's just Monday. No big deal. But 80 miles a gallon, something different.
Yeah. And I hear about this stuff all the time. So I'm a little bit more skeptical of people who are like, yeah, like we built this water powered car. Like there are certain ways to do it with, like, if you build like a hydrogen engine and stuff, it's like it's not.
Putting the hydrogen out would be. It's possible. It's doable. It's being done. It's just not any more efficient than it's probably, and slightly more dangerous and way more expensive than gas.
Yeah.
So and that guy that got shot, that security officer that got shot, has YouTube videos where he developed an engine that runs on water. So I'm just saying, conspiracy theorists or conspiracy reality. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, again, like I'm a little bit skeptical of like the actual efficacy of that, like being a legitimate product.
I guess I mean, you can make a rocket that splits a tiny little bit of water, like a kid's rocket that will split water and hydrogen, and the hydrogen will burn. And it's like it's a readily available toy on the internet, so it's definitely possible. You have to wait like 3 days for the rocket to power up its hydrogen. So I just don't see that as
well. And that's what I mean. I'm like, I feel like they're people who are rich enough and powerful enough to want to make that type of thing like happen if it were possible from an engineering perspective right now.
It ruin the roads. If you could make a flying car, no one would want to pay for roads.
But then maybe, again, you show me actual good evidence. I haven't seen that like in real life. I see a lot of like, oh, this person like made this thing that like would have destroyed the oil companies and they silenced him. And I'm like, all right, but like,
well, they are all silent. Like, let's be honest.
I don't know, man. Like, it's so hard to keep a secret nowadays. I don't know.
All right.
Maybe, but maybe though. Again, I'm open to it. Again, there are people who've invented weird stuff. Usually, the problem is like it's either tough to do it at a mass scale or to do it at a level like at a consumer scale, or it's not profitable to do so. Which sometimes that is the case. Sometimes like really like there's an innovation that like
it makes things more expensive.
Well, or doesn't, right? Like or like it would make things cheap, so therefore like we can't really make money off of this. So like why produce the thing that we can't make money off of long term, right? Like there's like some of that happens.
I agree. There is some of that happens. I'm trying to think of something specific, but
yeah,
if we give it enough thought, or we could prepare a whole show on that,
Yeah, right.
Good
But again,
ideas.
like it's not necessarily conspiracy. It's more like like it's no one really feels like doing it, and usually again, there's complicated reasons behind that.
True.
All right. We should probably call it. We've been going on an hour and a half now.
I know, and
I know more comments are coming in too.
I know, and I appreciate it, guys. I do.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here, and I'm sorry that we can't be here more often. Work is work, and fun is fun, and we've got to do all those things, But I'm glad that we had this time together tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, have a wonderful, wonderful night and enjoy the rest of your Labor Day weekend.